Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ed Gow Jr. I'm a member of the steering committee for Dad Central Ontario. And I'd like to say thanks for taking your time out of your positive, productive schedule to attend another one of our great webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about protecting your kids in a digital world. Let me give a little context on why we're going to be sharing about this today. Since COVID hit, screen time for children has gone way, way up. With increased remote learning, use of video chats to stay connected, growing numbers of social media platforms, and the rise of live streaming technology, children are online and using their digital devices more than ever. In this climate, increased time online also means increased risks for children. Most parents feel unprepared and overwhelmed when it comes to technology use and their children. Parents obviously want to keep kids safe. So this conversation event will give you information, resources, and skills to take immediate action. So before we go any further, I'd like to introduce the Director of Dad Central Ontario, Drew Solon. How are you today, Drew?
Well, thank you, Ed. I'm doing well. And most importantly, as usual, I'm excited for the conversation because of, I think that just the knowledge and insight of the people that we bring to these conversations. And so today's no exception to that. But before we do get into that, I want to do a quick intro about Dad Central. If you haven't joined us for one of these free events before, really Dad Central, our vision is an involved, responsible, and devoted dad for every child. And one of the things that we've been fortunate to be able to do this year is to really use technology to connect, educate, and hopefully empower both dads and organizations to really build healthy children and to go through this difficult time with some sense of resource, because there sometimes aren't enough resources out there for dads in particular. And we also know organizations really struggle sometimes to serve dads. And so our goal is to really fill that gap and help support that. And so that's about a little bit who we are. And one of the things that I'm grateful for is that we rely on financial support from the Public Health Agency of Canada, but we've also got a great supporter in Doveman Care. And so they've been really instrumental in helping us this year do more of this, bring great resources, great people to come to this conversation to really help support parents and support dads and support organizations who serve families. And so I just want to say thank you very much to the Public Health Agency of Canada and to Doveman Care for their support. And thank you for joining us today and for your support of the resources that we are producing and providing for you. And so 4 quick things I want to share about this event. One, if you can, and I think all of you have now, please keep your cameras off. We really want to focus on the panelists and the conversation and what they've got to share on this important topic. 2, we really encourage you to use the chat function though, because we want you to ask your questions there. It can be in the flow of the conversation, or it can just be in the set sort of Q&A period towards the end around 12:50. We'll try and break specifically for answering any questions that aren't addressed throughout it. Welcome you to use that chat, but we also ask that you would please keep your comments and questions respectful. And 4th, we do have a list of additional resources around this topic that we will share throughout or probably more towards the end. The other thing is that if you've registered, we will be sending you an email that has access to all of these additional resources or links that are part of these additional resources at the end. The other thing is that we will be sending a post-event survey. We'd love to get your feedback again on how are we doing as far as giving you resources that are going to help with this topic area. So that's it for the admin piece and just helping people understand the position, how this conversation is going to work. Now let me turn it back to you and the main event. So thanks very much, Ed.
Thank you very much, Drew. Thanks for laying the foundation for what I feel is going to be an epic conversation. But we can't have an epic conversation with 3 good friends that we have for this event. So let me just introduce each one of them to you. First up, we have Jay LeVar Bryan Sr. He's the founder and CEO of the Dad's List. He's a dad advocate and a father of 4. So welcome to you today, Jay LeVar. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Looking forward to your participation and your thoughts. Next up, we have Paul Davis, social networking safety expert. He's a TEDx speaker, parent educator, over 28 years of IT professional experience, and a techie dad. Welcome, Paul.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. And finally, we have Mark Alexandre Ladecour, media education specialist for Media Smarts. Mark Alexandre, how are you today?
So well, thanks.
I like that so well. That's so smooth. So well. I like that. Let's get into it, gentlemen. Let's have a great conversation. So we have some questions we'd like to have each one of you sort of participate in and share with our audience. So our first conversation piece today is, what are the risks that parents need to be aware of when it comes to kids and their use of technology? Who would like to jump in first?
So I'll jump in right off the bat. One of the things that I think parents just need to be aware of is they got to stay up to date as much as they can. I think that it's very easy, and we joke around all the time to say that kids, a 5-year-old knows how to use the device better than a 50-year-old at this point. But at some point, it's not funny because that lack of information kind of puts you at a disadvantage. And so that's one of the things you probably need to be aware of as much as possible, is just trying to stay up to speed as much as you can.
Paul, Mark?
I'll tag on to what's been said there, because I like starting off with the joke, the idea that the kids are better connected, that they come out with their thumbs glued to their devices. And what we've noticed is that this means that a lot of kids know a lot about how to access information, how to access the world of connectivity that is the internet, but they're not always aware of the risks that can be posed if you go in there without forewarning, if you will. And so I think one of the main risks to consider, as well as keeping up with what's going on, is communicating with kids about what they are doing, and I say with kids, with children, with youth, with adolescents, with what is going on in their daily online lives.
And I'll add on to that we are lacking a ton of structure in our homes today. We do not know how to say no to kids. We empower them with all the technology they want, and we don't put restrictions in place. Conversation is critical. Making assumptions that they know it all, that they can navigate it by themselves, is a false sense of security. It causes parents to have to reach out and always constantly ask for help. And so we need more parental. So what Jay LeVar said, we need more parental involvement. We need them to understand the technology before they empower the children with the technology. The foundation for safety is if I don't get it, I'm just not going to give it to you. We have to work on this together. And parents have to be involved. They may not understand it. It's their job to understand it.
Excellent. I have a question arising of what you've shared already, but I'll tag it on to our second conversation piece. The second conversation piece I have for all three of you is that for a parent who has never thought about this topic or feels like they don't know enough about technology, where did you suggest they start? Or if they know a little bit, how do they keep plugged in? Because Jay LeVar said keeping up to date. Well, what happens if they know nothing or they're trying to keep up?
Yeah, I think they all need to attend University of YouTube. I think that in today's day and age, the playing field has been completely leveled when it comes to access to information. No longer do you have to order encyclopedias from the door-to-door salesman, or do you have to find your way to the nearest library all the time. I think that everything's at your fingertips. So, for years we got used to just Googling, right? And you can do the same thing, just YouTube it. And so put one or two keywords in, how to blank, what is this? And you'll be surprised how many 2-minute videos pop up if you have a short attention span, or how many 30 or 40-minute videos pop up if you need in-depth knowledge. So at this point, it's just taking a little bit of effort to seek out that information, but I would definitely say YouTube would be that first resource that I would go to as a knee-jerk reaction.
Would like to add on?
Well, I'll suggest taking advantage of a lot of the resources that are out there, including, for example, most parents, I'm not saying it's the right way to go, but most parents will give their kids an iDevice as their first device. Well, given the money you've spent with an iPhone, iPod, iPad, or a MacBook, why don't you take advantage of all the free resources at the Apple Store? And yeah, they will open up. We will go back to living at some point. They have hour-long courses that you can go there and you can learn from the basics to the most complex. The Apple guys are amazing. They will sit down with you. There's no bad questions. Take an interest in the device you've empowered your child with, so you understand at the very minimum the basics of how that device
operates. And then from there, take advantage of forums like this, where we invest an hour of our day. Yes, it's over lunch, but this is a wonderful investment of time to understand what they need to know. And when these forums are available, or there's a speaker that comes to a school, never make the assumption, I already know that. Go there, learn about it, be updated. I mean, I've been in IT 29 years of my life. I've dedicated my career to it, and I still update myself by traveling to conferences, going online and learning. If I do that every day, parents need to make the effort to take advantage of what is available out there. And a lot of it is free, to be up to date, because we find ourselves in a very responsive role as parents versus a proactive role. And we have to be more proactive and take advantage of the resources available.
I like two things you said there, Paul. Two things that really stick out to me is that investment of time, not an expense, and also being on the offensive instead of being on the defensive, because too many times parents are on the defensive and it's sometimes too late when they find that out. So I really like what you said there. Mark?
Oh, well, I'm going to tag on to the last line Paul delivered with the idea of free resources. And he had the integrity to point out to different sources out there. I'm a little bit more shameless. I'm going to point out to Media Smarts right away. What I mean to say by that is that's a question that we've actually asked ourselves and very concretely produced resources so that people going into sort of what we call media literacy, that means coming into this world of technology and knowing how to handle it, knowing how to encounter it critically. We've developed Media Literacy 101, which is very much the basics. And after that, we've got all these resources, tip sheets, all meant for parents that want to help their children encounter the world of this digital age, as well as help themselves. Because let's face it, one of the basic things we need are the words, the vocabulary to encounter, and as Paul said, the ability to say yes, no, based on what we know is going on. Or frankly, what we don't know is going on, but we know how to get informed. So I saw a little message pop up in the chat. What if you don't have access to an Apple store? I don't know. I can't answer about the Apple virtual versions, but I can say for sure over at Media Smarts, you'll find what you're looking for.
Plug.
But that's it for plug. No, really, the information is available out there. I'm giving one resource because it's Canadian, because it's research based, but YouTube, Apple Store, our own. I think these answers have all been just fantastic.
Good. A question that's arisen out of this, respectfully, I know we're probably mid-age. I'm going to say that. We all look great. We all look handsome. When we were growing up, we didn't get our first digital device probably till, I'm going to say respectfully, probably in our mid-teens, maybe early 20s. But now our kids are getting them at a really young age. Is there an age that they're being exposed to it in the classroom, but is there an age that we should really start getting them involved in digital education, offline education? Is there a preferred age, or is it depending on the situation?
So if you're asking about just outside of the educational aspect of it, so when they're doing it in school and distance learning, so they have no choice to do it right now. That's one thing. But when parents are volunteering to give their kids devices at early ages, as that's just the norm, to each his own. Every parent has their own experiences. When did they get devices? When their familiarity with it, or what they're comfortable with, or how much they monitor their children, or how much they trust their children. I think everyone has a different perspective. I think it's a level of responsibility. And I think we all, your children, right? And even from an early age, you can start recognizing some of their habits, some of their traits. This is the one who pushes the boundaries. This is the one who's always very safe and calm. And this one is the one that's really respectful. This one's really nurturing. And so you start to pick up on who your kids are. And therefore, I think it's a great idea to kind of manage that timeline based on who your kids are, because you may have an 8-year-old. I have 4 kids. My 2 older ones are 8 and 10. And, my 8-year-old may be more mature with the devices than the 10-year-old. The 10-year-old could be the one that's always trying to get one by me, and at that point, I'd rather give my 8-year-old a phone before I give my 10-year-old a phone. So I think we just have to pay attention to who our kids are and use that as part of the deciding factor of how soon and what device do we give them access to outside of education.
Paul and Mark, do you want to add on to that at all?
For sure. I can tell you that when I speak to grade 4, 5, 6s, I survey them. I've spoken to over 620,000 students in 4 provinces and 5 states in person, and not all of them are 4, 5, 6s, but I have my data up until March. Now I have my data virtually speaking. And let me give you my data from September until yesterday. Of the grade 4, 5, 6s I speak to, 75% of them were surveyed as having a smartphone in grade 4, 5, 6. 90% of them are using their technology in their bedroom. These are 2 questions I ask. And then there's another question if you want to address it later with social media, but I won't give you the stats. When I look at the core of some of the problems, when you give a child in grade 4, 5, 6, $1,000 device that most adults have no idea how to properly use. In the evening, when I speak to their parents, I tell them this is called too much too soon. You know, there was a movement called Not Before Grade 8. And I don't know what the right answer is. And I've dedicated my whole life to cyber and IT. But I can tell you around the grade 8 timeframe is probably that time for a smartphone, because every excuse given to me as to why a child has a phone in grade 4, 5, 6 is always one of those, well, the friends have it. They don't want to feel isolated. They don't want to be left out. In case of an emergency, my favorite one is when I'm told in case of an emergency, like $1,000 phone is that reason. Look, I'm all for technology. In fact, in the classroom, if you want a perfect recipe for technology, it's called a flip phone and it's called a Chromebook. And for $400, kids will be educated, not distracted. They won't be touching the device all the time with blinking lights, yet they'll use a Chromebook for the purposes of all the education. And I see that as excellent. The smartphone in the classroom is a proven distraction. It's not even a theory anymore. It's a proven distraction. And, you know, to what Jay LeVar said is that every child uses something differently, but the majority are not disciplined at that age to just not touch it because it's there. It blinks, it goes off. So my strategy has always been, yeah, wait till around grade 8, but up until then, give them that fair opportunity to learn without distraction. And there is proper technology, but it's that smartphone that is causing the distraction. And then I'm not an expert in addiction, where people say they become addicted because they're always on it. So I have a lot of data to back that up. And my guidance to parents is you're allowed to wait and you're allowed to say no. But that's hard for some, right? And I respect that.
Mark, anything you want to add?
Yeah, that's so there are a lot of good points made. And one thing that I think we could sorry. What I need to say is one thing we can do is look at leading by.
Okay, we're having a little technical difficulty with Mark. So what we're going to do is, Drew, you wanted to come in. So if you'd come in for a second, Drew, and because you had a question you had to ask or a point you wanted to make.
Well, I did. And, you know, I'm in the situation where I have 3 kids. So I've got 2 7-year-olds and a 5-year-old. And this year we're doing virtual school. And so we have never had iPads or other devices. Both my wife and I have an iPhone. But as we've come into this place, you know, they've got access to mostly educational items, but they've got access to sometimes YouTube and all these other elements. And we never really consciously thought of it. But on YouTube, it's kind of like a slippery slope, not in that YouTube university educational way, but it's a slippery slope in terms of it just could play who knows what next. And there are sometimes ads that come up that we don't really want our kids to see, and they're young. And so what I was wondering is if maybe the panelists could talk to more about what are and so there are things, these are risks that we hadn't really considered or thought of until it was kind of in our face. So we want to be proactive, but we realized we were actually in reactive mode. And so then I started to learn about, you know, online luring. I started to learn about, you know, sexting and some of the things that other parents who have older kids are dealing with in terms of technology. And so to me, those were the risks that I was unaware of as a parent until I kind of got confronted with it. So I was wondering if the panelists could maybe talk to some of those types of things that they have heard, not necessarily horror stories, but things that we as parents who, unless we're really proactive about this, and we tried to be, but we were behind, that we need to be aware of, that why the things you're talking about now are so important. Because what are those things that our kids could get exposed to that could be very detrimental in the process? That's what I was more curious about, because again, my story, we were behind the ball, but we didn't really want to be.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that first. But one of the key things that I think parents need to be aware of, and it ties back into utilizing YouTube or the Apple Store to learn more, but whether you have an Apple device or Samsung device or what it may be, in 2020, almost every single one of these devices have parental restrictions in the settings available to you. And they can get very, very granular. For a lot of us in a business corporate environment, we're used to being controlled by some form of mobile device management system to where you can't use the camera in this system or in this company. Well, as parents, we have the same kind of capabilities as well. I mean, for example, if you talk about the App Store and you talk about YouTube and how YouTube can go from playing Yo Gabba Gabba to something completely inappropriate, well, there's a kid's version of the YouTube app, right, that you can actually install. And then there's restrictions that you can put on the iPad or on the phone to make sure that they can't go and download whatever app they want. And then they have to ask permission to download, or even if it's a free app, you can make sure that they have to ask permission and it pops up on your device so that you can put the passcode in to allow someone to be able to download a new app. Whether you have some of these other restrictions that you have in place to make sure that the kids are safe, like being able to completely get rid of the Safari browser on the device completely. So now there's no browser on there, and you can go into the App Store and download a whole new browser that is dedicated to parental controls. A lot of them are free. Some of the really good ones are paid for, only a few bucks, sometimes no more than $5. But again, so there are, I think we need to dive more into what those restrictions are and what our capabilities are, because then at that point, you'll be able to know how much you can protect your children. And then there's always, larger platform related kind of things that you can do, but just on the basic level that comes standard on these devices, just go into the settings and start tweaking with the restrictions will make a big difference.
And further to that, if you are an Apple user, you should have Apple Family Sharing embedded. I mean, that should be a no-brainer. If you are an Android user, you need to have Google Family Link. So those are two free applications, further to what Jay LeVar said, which is restrictions. Now, Drew, to your point about YouTube, YouTube is a rabbit hole. We all know that. It always has been. I encourage teachers all the time, never, ever send your child to YouTube to watch a video for educational purposes. I believe in the education of YouTube, except now it has to be done a bit wiser. So there's a file I've created, and I'll be more than happy to share it with you, to share with all the attendees today. You can take YouTube videos that teachers have approved. You can take the link to the video, you bring it into a different website. The website recompiles the video. They're doing this all legally, by the way. Now, when they share it with the child using a new URL, there are no suggestions on the right-hand side. There are no pop-ups in the video. There's no biography, and there's no comments. So now teachers can have peace of mind sharing a YouTube video that they've already approved, and the child could be at home at the kitchen table while mom and dad are making dinner, knowing that after that video, they're not going to go down the slippery slope of all the suggestions on the right-hand side. So YouTube is a rabbit hole. I would not put a kid on there by themselves. YouTube Kids is a wonderful option for 10 years of age and under. But for homework purposes, and I completely respect all the education on YouTube, it's a wonderful, wonderful place. After that initial video, remember the suggestions are that rabbit hole. So I'll send you the file. You can send that to as many individuals as you want. You can take videos, recompile them, where now there's no more suggestions. When they're done watching the video, they click on the X, they're out of the video.
And in the meantime, one of the best things to do is turn off that autoplay function. How often we fall down that rabbit hole with autoplay? I believe 75% of videos viewed on YouTube actually come from the autoplay function, the up next recommendations. So these are more like steps that you can take to gradually get. I hope I'm not speaking contrary to anybody else. In terms of the security and safety matters that Drew brought up, and I'm sorry that I froze a little bit earlier, as I'm sure everybody saw. I find that one of the best things is how we use our technology ourselves as parents. When my kids were born, did I bombard them? And of course they're babies, so they don't know, but we're taking pictures of them. How many of us, raising my hand because I'm guilty of having done it too, decided to go ahead and post those pictures online? And by the time they're old enough, what we really recommend is to start modeling the behavior you want, asking them, hey, we took this picture today at your birthday party. Can I post it online for my friends to see? Just start modeling that behavior. With all of that's already been said, I don't want to repeat. This is the next step, because ultimately, and I've seen the comment in the chat a few times, we're not going to keep up with everything that kids get up to in the world of especially social media. And that's quite on purpose. The reason kids move on to new social media platforms is to get away from parental control for a while. And especially in the teen years, we see this desire to build their own independent identity. So there's a difference between controlling what they're doing and having ongoing conversations about what they're doing. And that's my next. Once we've established the basic parameters, basic home parameters, which everybody's already contributed to in their own answers, we start talking about going forward. I'm not going to pick up your phone and see what you've been doing unless I suspect that there's a problem going on. And that conversation can lead to a lot of trust building, so that if ever there is an issue that comes up, they turn to you instead of trying to shame away in the corner.
Great. Next conversation piece, and I think we've already been discussing it, but you may have some things to add, gentlemen. How can parents create an environment that supports technology as needed, but also keeps kids safe? So I think some of it may have already been covered over the last few months, but if there's anything additional that has not been discussed in regards to this question, please feel free.
One thing I'll add on to something I said before, we talk about restrictions. We talk a lot about mobile devices, but there are still a lot of desktop computers and laptops that our kids are utilizing. And so, again, I can speak from an Apple standpoint. We're basically an Apple household. We have some Google stuff too, but there are ways you can just create a profile on the computer to begin with. So instead of after the fact trying to restrict X, Y, and Z, you can just create a whole new user that is set just for parental guidance to begin with. And what's great about that is you can still allow them to do what they need to do, whether it's schoolwork or anything else. However, the moment they go to a website, or they're trying to get to a website that the system seems something's up with that, it could be completely innocent, but it has these triggers, and it allows me to come in and put a passcode in to allow and log in so that they can access that website. So there's, and again, those same granular controls on the mobile devices, you can do the same thing on a desktop as well. So it's not all mobile, it's also, on a desktop as well.
Yeah, and this Friday is a big shopping day, so I encourage you all to go and pick up an app-enabled router. An app-enabled router in your home will assist you in many facets, meaning from an app on your device, you can control time restrictions on Xbox, PlayStation, Wii, iOS, Android, any device, MacBook, Chromebook, Windows PC. So you are in control. And look, at an age where children are in elementary school, it's about restriction. I'm not going to be politically incorrect. It's about restriction. When they get into their teenage years, wean off restriction and more into conversation, relationships. That starts under restriction. It moves away in their teenage years. But remember, we can never fault a child for their curiosity. But when you empower them with too much, too young, and they get in trouble, because, listen, one of the biggest failures in parenting is when we say we trust our kids. Let's just call it the way it is. I trust my daughters. They're both teenagers, but I know they're teenagers. And so we have conversation about what's happening. When they were younger, I trust them equally as much, but I restricted because I know their curiosity, not through any fault of anything that we've done, can lead them astray. We have to protect young minds at a young age. That involves restriction. As they evolve, they mature, we have to develop relationships. I said this to Drew. One of the biggest issues I see, and that's why I'm so happy to be here, is the absentee of a lot of dads in kids' technological lives. I know this. I know my audience, who my audience is. I know who my audience is online and in person. We need engagement from both mom and dad, whoever the caregivers are. It could be two moms, two dads. We need engagement, and we need to build relationships. At the beginning, the restrictions are important until we move to the relationship building stage. Because to Mark's point earlier on, yes, relationship and conversation is key. But at a young age, we need all parents involved in understanding what's happening, and the restrictions will help them tremendously.
Absolutely. at this point, I feel like I'll almost just be repeating what Paul has just said, but I'll try to be a little bit more original than that. Because it's like anything else in childhood development, just the basic format of a question. How vast a question can be, and how we try to border that question in order to answer it in terms that our kids can understand at a young age. Technology works a lot the same way. We restrict aspects of technology for the way the brain understands at that point, and come into building proper use throughout the years. Because, and here I have to say, I have no particular recommendation on when children should start accessing technology, because I really do respect that parents will know when it's the right time for their kids. And if they don't, they can follow other advice that's already been given. But once we do, we start going step by step. And this is giving full credit here to all of the last comments.
And if I can add one more thing to
Sure.
what Paul was saying as far as just a resource, many of your ISPs or your internet service providers that provides Wi-Fi in your home have a dedicated app already there. So you don't have to pay for anything. It's just already there. You already have access to it. You just download the application. And when you talk about trusting your children and being able to have that conversation, it allows you to have some granular controls as well, to where you can identify each person in the household, and you can say and identify which devices they're on. And then if you said, okay, after 9 p.m., they shouldn't be on their device. And you may trust them at first, and you have that conversation at first, but then you can actually know when, if they're still on their devices. And then at that point, you can choose to say, hey, you know what? I tried trusting you, and this is what the next step is. And now you have access to actually turn off internet to that one particular device and still have the rest of the house running no problem. So for those who did not know that's a feature, it is, and it's already there. So just check with your internet service provider and see if they have an application that's there that you can establish for your home to have that kind of granular control as well.
Excellent. Just want to shout out to everyone who's watching this live. Great comments going on in the chat room, and some of the participants who are watching this live are providing resources in real time. So thank you so much for that. That's appreciated. Let's continue on with our conversation here. Next conversation piece. What things would you say parents should never do when it comes to kids and their use of technology?
Yeah, I would say never just have no communication and no involvement at all. Like right now, my two older kids play Roblox, right? And at first, when I heard the craze of Roblox over the past few years was going on, I'm not interested in Roblox. So if I'm playing any game, it's 2K on my Xbox. But the thing about it is that I quickly had to realize, even if I don't care about that game, I need to know what's going on. I need to know how it works. And so once I kind of dove in a little bit, I was able to say, all right, well, okay, there's a ton of different types of games. And then there's a ton of different types of this. And I had the negative experience of realizing that my 10-year-old was not mature enough to handle one of the games she was playing, because it was role playing like a high school environment. And she's 10 years old, but I was not aware at the time because I didn't dive in like I should have at first. But then when I started to realize she was complaining about certain things and the way she was handling it emotionally, I was like, okay, what's going on? I need to pause. I need to learn everything I need to know about this game. And then I had to also realize that the game Roblox as a whole wasn't the issue. It was me understanding that that particular game within the game was the issue that she couldn't handle. And we had to ban it completely, because, and we had to have that conversation with her. Is nothing wrong with the game itself, but for your ability to be able to handle the different emotional aspects of it, the friendship. I mean, building friendships in person is difficult, but then now these virtual relationships that they're creating takes on a whole new level. And we have to be on top of that. So I would say from my personal experience, because again, none of us are perfect as parents, I bit that bullet, and I learned firsthand that you have to be involved even in the games that they play. That I would say, don't just, they're just playing a game. just go do what you got to do. Leave me alone. Go play your game. We definitely need to be way more involved. And even if you never play a minute of it, you need to understand how that game works to some degree.
My answer is very complex. I'm going to keep it very simple. Never, you ask what we should never do, never assume that your kids know everything. Never assume that you know what they're doing. And never assume, how to put this in a nice way.
Just put it, Paul. Just put it. Paul, I can tell you're a straight shooter, so shoot straight, my brother.
Listen, let's just leave it at never assume, because it's when we assume that our kids get into trouble. Okay, they will outwit you in technology. Talk to them, ask them questions. Majority of them want to tell you. They love teaching mom and dad about the technology. But making assumptions that, and this is the one. Not my child. Have you heard that before? Mm-hmm. No, it'll never happen to my child. That's impossible. Never make that assumption, because it fails our kids. So I'm going to leave the question on never as to those statements there.
Well, just before Mark continues on, I tell people one of the most dangerous words in the world is assumption. Mm-hmm. So I feel you. I get you. Mark, go ahead.
So I had to think on that one quite a bit. Leaving long stories aside, I've got a bit of a background in philosophy. So when someone says never, all these alarm bells go off. Oh, you're not supposed to use that word. But I've agreed with every answer so far. So clearly there are times to use that word. So I will repeat a theme that's already come across, and then I'll give another one. First, never give unrestricted access. And when I say unrestricted, I mean just as much turning a blind eye to, this goes back to never assume they know what they're doing. Just avoid that. Or if it's possible to put it positively, always come back to discussing what's going on. The only other never I would propose, I've momentarily forgotten it, so I'm going to come back to it in a split second while I'm stalling with words here. Yes, sorry. The other never is to never tell a kid if there's a problem that comes up, it'll just blow over. The internet doesn't work that way, for one thing, and more importantly, that if your children come to you with a problem like that online, not only is it true that it'll never blow over, because there is that idea of permanency on the internet, there's also that great opportunity to get into a conversation about it and find the internet never forgets. Thank you, Paul.
Well, I'm here.
There's also that great opportunity to go and find concrete solutions together. And there are a whole bunch of recommendations on how to deal with various problems we might encounter on the internet, whether it be inappropriate relationships, whether it be a stupid mistake, and across the spectrum, you will find lots of information on that is available online.
Excellent. Anyone want to add on to anything that's been said so far? Everyone good? All right, we'll move on forward. Here's the big question. What role do you think dads can play in protecting children in today's digital world?
I'd say I'd like to mirror what Paul said earlier about being an example. Is how do we utilize our devices? And how, one thing that I am guilty of, and I'll just own it again, we have to be transparent with each other. And as dads, that's one of the issues we talk about on my podcast all the time is we're not honest with each other. We don't share with each other as men. But I'm someone where I'm in IT for a living, so I'm always on my device, and I'm running multiple businesses all from my device. To me, it's a convenience to be able to not have to sit in the computer all the time, but from a phone or an iPad, I can be able to run things no matter where I'm in the kitchen or cooking or what it may be. And so the kids see that. And I know my son, my 8-year-old, he's the kid that has no filter. That's my fault. That's a part of me. But he jokes around about, dad's always on his phone, or, where's dad? He's probably doing what he does best. He's always on his phone, and I understand I have some responsibility to, taking care of my household and all that through those devices. But at the same time, when my kids don't get all of that and all they see is that I'm on my device, then I'm setting a negative example for them. And so when it comes to how they use devices, If all they know that it's okay is to be on your phone all the time, then I think as we go into the teenage years and all that, and I'm not there yet, and not rushing for it either, but I think that's something we just have to be really cautious of. Is just modeling the behavior we want to see from them and knowing some restrictions. So for example, I've made a commitment to myself to, when we're at the dinner table, no devices at the dinner table, right? Things like that. Simple, the little things, right? That you think is no big deal. But when I'm waiting on a call or I'm waiting on a text, I can justify it all day long why my phone is on and right beside me at the dinner table. But again, to the kids, they don't understand all that. They shouldn't have to understand that. So I say modeling would be a good.
Before Paul jumps in, it's interesting. You were reading my alleged mind, Jay LeVar. One of my mentors, his two older daughters have grown up now, but when they were younger, what they would do around the dinner table, they would all have a basket and they would put all their digital devices in the basket and they would not be touched during dinner time.
Yeah.
So it sort of, it builds on what we were saying earlier on about building the relationship piece. Like when everyone was having dinner, phones, laptops, whatever, cell phones, etc., smart devices were all put in a basket. This was our time to develop relationships without any digital interruption. So I just wanted to add that. Go ahead, Paul.
Number one, we need to get more dads involved in our kids' life online. They need to take a vested interest. And why am I saying that? Because I can tell you when I speak to parents at schools, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I take numbers all the time, and 80% of my audience are moms. And when I joke about that at night, I'll get oh yeah, they know it all, and they sent us to get more information, but they don't. We need more dads involved in our children's online lives. Number two, we need our dads to support the moms in that household and not go against their rules and not contradict them. Because what's happening is a lot of the moms who leave my presentation do implement a lot of rules in their households, but then the dads who haven't heard me don't actually believe it, don't care for it. And so they have they don't have any rules. And so now there's favoritism in the house. You know what? Well, I'm going to hang out more with dad. And then if we have a split house, it gets even worse. A split household, because now we have one parent, and I'm saying this by my statistics, usually the mom, with the rules. Dad has no rules. Well, guess what? The kid now starts playing the home. We need parents on the same page. And if they're in split homes, regardless of how much they dislike each other or may they not get along with each other, for the sake of the child, they need to be on the same page. And finally, to what Jay LeVar said, we need to model positive behavior. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, phones do not exist. Our children need to know that they're the most important things in the world to us, because if that phone blinks and you take your eyes off the child and you go to the phone back to the child, your child already knows they are second best to that device. I don't care how important any of us perceive we believe. I can tell you that I travel every day in this country with 5 phones, 4 smartphones, 1 flip phone. But at breakfast, lunch, dinner, in any restaurant I've entered, my children don't have a device. I don't have a device. My wife has it in her purse in case of an emergency. We respect each other. We talk to each other. It is the foundation for our family to communicate. I model that behavior, and I want parents to model that behavior. So kids know, yeah, they're paying attention to me, because otherwise, to what Jay LeVar said, they're going to do the same thing. And then we get mad at them. And then we get angry at them. We need to model that positive behavior. And dads, we got to step up our game.
Stuff, Mark.
Just a second. Because how many times did you do that to our kids, right?
Well done.
Thank you.
Good one.
I mean, thank you guys. You've given me the amount of time to start preparing a bit of a dramatic response. But how many times do we do that to our kids? And how does it feel? I just did it to a group of fantastic strangers. And I'm sure some people thought, what's going on here? This isn't what we signed up for. And in a family, that should be the basic presumption. This is not what we signed up for. We signed up for communication. I 100% agree with all of the ideas of no tech at dinner, taking a tech vacation, taking special time to do activities that are entirely low tech. Fantastic. When it comes to the question of what should we do with tech, of course, I'm going to stay away from the answer, well, don't use it, because it's a very valuable one. But if going into the question of what do we do with the tech in the family, what do dads do with the tech? We've mentioned modeling. That's fantastic. Dads, let's take a really strong look at our values. do we truly value that family time? If that is a value for me, my actions have to reflect it, and my kids will know. And this remains important. And I'll just repeat after that. Yeah, don't let your partner be the policymaker in the home. It's very, very easy to enforce rules when we're not the ones enforcing the rule. And this is, I know it's repetitious, but I think it's because the answer is so obvious, is that it is a team effect, a team effort, pardon me, and a value-based effort. So if you look at yourself and say, actually, no, I think that my phone really has that highest value, well, that's a conversation to be had afterwards as well. But to Paul's comment, you're probably better off stepping up your game if that's the case.
Okay. Another conversation piece we have here. What is or are parental control features or software? I know you discussed it a little bit earlier on, all three of you, but how and when would you recommend parents use them? So I think we talked a little bit about it, but when should parents put those parental control features into effect?
I'd say immediately. I mean, my youngest is 2 years old, going to be 3 next month. And there's a feature on Apple devices that allows you to lock the display just to one particular application. You know, at first, when, you know, a lot of parents were like, man, whenever I give my kid the phone, they delete apps or they go into different things and they're using it to protect their stuff. But when it comes to even at 2 years old, being able to manage those restrictions and manage what they see, lock them into, if you want to lock them into that the YouTube for Kids app, then you can lock them in. They can't move around. They can't hit the home button. They can't turn and do any of that kind of stuff. So as early as that, you know, those are restrictions that are available to us. So I'd say as soon as possible.
The second you put the device in your child's hand, it comes accompanied with the restrictions. It's not an add-on in a month or 2 months or 5 months, because it'll take a day before something goes wrong. It's immediately. So I would unwrap the gift. I'd make sure everything is installed. All the protocols are in place, but as soon as they open it, it's there right away. It's not a delayed process.
Completely agree. And just to add more of what I previously communicated, tell your kid why. Mm-hmm. Tell your child why you're putting those things in place, because they are, as much as their brains are still in development, they are smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. They do understand a little bit better what is going on. And at the very least, if they have a why, that saves you the later conversation of why, and why that. Why? Because it's been made clear right off the bat.
Before I get to my last conversation piece, there is a question here I saw in the audience. And I think, Mark, you may have touched on a bit. I just want to know if anyone else wants to expand on it. Any advice on one parent very knowledgeable, but the other not having as much knowledge on technology? How should that situation be handled?
Yeah, I would definitely say one of the best ways to handle that is to, one, find out if that other parent is willing to learn, right? Because you can't force anybody to do something they don't want to do. And make sure you guys are on the same page of why it's important for them to want to learn. And then 2, understand what their learning style is. Not everybody's the same. You know, you may need to, some people prefer written, visual, audio, the whole 9, right? So for some people, you may need to send them a YouTube link that may have some videos that explain something. You may understand that your partner doesn't have a lot of time on their hands. So sending them a 20-minute video explaining something is not going to be ideal. They'll see the counter on there and they're just not even going to watch it. So maybe finding a 5-minute video or a 3-minute video that explains the same thing. You may need to send them articles that they can actually read, because that's how they need to operate. Or based on what their job is, they don't have time to watch something, but they can read something in the meantime. You know, so it's also talking to friends. We all know who the tech person in our circles are, you know, the man or the woman who that's what they do. And sometimes say, hey, why don't you have a conversation with so-and-so, right? I'm the techie, right? In my household, I worked for Apple for 10 years. I'm in IT management solutions right now as we speak. And so, but we all know that it is very easy to come across where the person you raise your children with don't necessarily take the information even though you're the expert at it, it's like for some reason they don't believe you, right? But I say sometimes referring to friends or family members who you know are also very tech savvy encouraging them to have the same conversation with that person if they're going to hear it or receive it better. So I think we just have to figure out how do they learn and are they willing to learn and find different ways to get that information to them.
And a great way to do that is at the dinner table. We're going to have our devices away after this conversation, so we can have a conversation about the technology. So let's get the kids involved. Let's get the parent who isn't as tech savvy, and let's bring it to an understanding that they can relate to. And we make it a family event. So we're all talking about it. Remember, kids love talking, and the other individual should hopefully want to express what they know to help educate the partner that maybe doesn't know as much. It's wonderful conversation amongst everything else at the dinner table. Make that a part of it, even if it's a whole 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, just something basic so they have an understanding.
Mark?
I'll be, in fact, quite brief this time because we've already touched on it. The answer will be more for the parent who is not as tech savvy. And this was a huge learning curve for me as well, was admitting that sometimes I didn't know something in front of my kids. And that's hard because you want to have the answers and everything. So when you realize that you don't know what to do about tech, admit it, be humble, and follow the advice that has been previously given by the other two panelists.
Great question. Another great question here in the audience. And this may be a tough one. Someone is asking, how do we keep our kids safe with devices outside our homes, at friends' homes? Anyone have any?
Yeah, so this is going to sound harsh, but remember, we want parents to be all on the same playing field, meaning if you don't allow your child to play Grand Theft Auto because they're 10, and you send your child to a home where their parents don't care and they play Grand Theft Auto and they're exposed to inappropriate content, this is harsh. Don't send them to their home. You want to make sure your kids are playing with kids where you're actually on the same level in terms of what you've instilled for restrictions, what you allow your child to have, what you don't allow them to have. Now, that's one component. The other is, remember, when they leave your home, and so we have all these filters in our home, we need to be able to take it maybe to a next level outside the home. Well, let's even assume it's not at a friend's house, but they leave your home Wi-Fi. There are products called Custodio. There are product called Circle, which allow you, again, through an app. What it does is it follows the MAC address of the device, whether it's an iDevice or an Android, and you can put restrictions so that if they connect to their friend's Wi-Fi and you've told them, no, you're not using YouTube, when they go to YouTube, they'll be restricted from using it. You can restrict the amount of time they're on social media. This is not the best scenario. It is an assistant to parents who put rules in place and also have conversations with the other parents where their child, the homes that their child are visiting, say, listen, this is what I allow my kid. Are the rules the same? Because otherwise, what parents put in place at home, which by the way can be amazing, it takes 5 minutes in a stranger's home for that kid to be scarred. So as unfair as that statement is, they need to be on the same playing field. Otherwise, that's how kids get hurt, because it's a completely different environment outside the supervision of the parents. So,
okay. Anyone else want to add on that?
Oh, well, very, very briefly, one more time. At a younger age, it's easy. Maybe the device stays at home. That is probably but that again is saying, what do I do if my kid takes his device outside? Oh, don't let your kid bring his device outside. So I understand the nature of that recommendation. But if there is going to be a device, there are some things that you can do, like limit it to Wi-Fi connections. Don't give it cellular data. If they're only dependent on Wi-Fi connections, they'll have to have access to that. And now, of course, coffee shops, malls, friends' houses will all have that connectivity, but usually those public spaces, unless the kid is more tech savvy, will also already have filters in place. So that's one factor. But this is not to say that doing this is the way to ensure freedom of positive use outside of the household. I think the best for that, and Paul touched on it, I think actually everyone touched on it, talk to the other parents about your expectations. We are more connected than ever, so let's put that let's really put that to our advantage.
Great. Well, we're about to finish up the conversation here. So we have one last conversation piece for our friends here. So the final conversation piece is, if there was one final piece of advice you had for parents to protect their kids in the digital world, what would it be?
I would say for me, the one piece of advice is to have an open dialogue with your kids, depending on their age. Um, and that open dialogue needs to also involve the conversation around, I want to trust you, but I also want to put these things in place to protect you. And you may think that it's not, I'm limiting your fun, but there's things that I'm aware of that you're not aware of yet. And I want to do my best to protect you. That's my job as your father, is to protect you. And I want to also protect your childhood as well. Don't rush to grow up too fast, because I already blinked and I have 4 kids now. And I remember being in that place. So I would say open conversation. And right now, the level of conversation I'm having with my 8 and 10-year-old, I was not having when I was 8 and 10 years old. They are significantly more advanced. They're more exposed. The jokes we're able to joke about, it's crazy. So talking to my daughter at 10 sounds like I'm talking to a 20-year-old. So I don't even have to baby it or water it down. We can just have a straight up conversation. So I think if while you're putting these restrictions in place, just have the conversation and keep talking to them. When I talked about the Roblox thing, even with the DM capabilities, so forth, I had to step and say, I need to see who you're talking to. I need to see what's going on. It's not about me trying to police you. I just need to understand what's going on. Who's this person? And they'll explain, oh, that's somebody I met on the game. I say, okay, you can't talk to that person anymore. Who's this person? Oh, this is somebody that's in my class, or they're the neighbor down the street. Okay, that's cool, because I know them in person. I know their mom. Having that dialogue and letting them understand why. I've talked to my 2 older kids about child predators, because at 8 and 10 years old, they get it. They understand there are people who are catfishing and they're doing all this kind of stuff. So my kids understand that. And my daughter was a little concerned. She was really nervous about it. I was like, baby, I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm also trying to keep it real with you. And you're having this open world in your game. There's a lot of bad people still out there. So let's just have an open dialogue and be as honest as possible with our kids.
Paul?
Ed, I have 3. I don't have 1, so I'm going to have to.
Nope, take your time.
All right. Number 1, we need to remind parents that the word no has not been removed from the dictionary. You are allowed to say no. If you're not comfortable with something yet, you can say no. And you don't have to feel guilty about it either. Until you're comfortable, you're allowed to say no. Yeah, they'll throw a temper tantrum. They'll get upset. They'll get over it. You're a parent, they're a child, and we'll move on. Now, number 2, no technology in a child's bedroom. Computers, iPods, iPads, tablets have no business in your child's bedroom at home. Your kids have a wonderful gift. It's called curiosity. But curiosity in their bedroom by themselves is where they make the poorest choices. Ask any police officer when they're investigating, and they'll always see this common denominator: child isolated by themselves, connected to technology. Mom and dad are at home making dinner, cutting the grass, shoveling snow, talking to neighbors. No technology in the child's bedroom. And number 3, no social media until you are 13 years of age. Do not assume that they're mature enough, that they're acceptable to be on those platforms. If you are going to instill rules in your house that you expect your child to respect, if your child is expected to follow rules at school, if your child is playing sports and they're expected to follow the rules, we know what happens when we break the rules. There's penalty in sports, there's consequences in schools. Well, the consequences to breaking the rules when children are too young on social media, which is viewing at a very young age inappropriate content, racism, violence, vulgarity, pornography, you're going to scar your kid for life. It's not a red card. You get kicked off the field. It's not a 1-day suspension. It's scarred for life. Look, I don't know if 13 is the right age. I'm going by the terms of service. So we should respect that rule. And if you want to protect our kids, no tech in the bedroom, no social media until the right age. And guess what? We have a foundation where we can allow children to use technology, supervise with us, as Jay LaVar and Mark said, build relationships, communications, but we protect them at the same time, because when they're at that age where they're allowed to have social media, they'll be able to process it a little bit differently. We need to protect our young children's eyes up until they're allowed to be on these platforms, and then we have greater conversations with them, instill more responsibility with them, but protect them. And don't forget, you're allowed to say no.
Mark?
I think it's fantastic how much one answer leads into the other here. We're talking about user license agreements in terms of service in the age of 13. And very quickly, if an 8-year-old signs up for a service and says, yes, they are 13 years of age, well, in 5 years, that platform is going to recognize them as an adult user. And do we really want a 13-year-old being recognized as an adult user? So I completely agree with that. Some things that we can do around that is, for example, create a family account. And that's going to be my big piece of advice is don't be afraid to create an environment in which they can explore in a safe way. So whether it's Roblox, Minecraft, which I know are very big right now, create a family server in which different people can play, or maybe different kids from the neighborhood can play. If you're going to have a social media account, it's a family account where we're, again, going to be modeling the right kind of behavior. And of course, except putting all of those restrictions so that it's only a closed network and that you're only getting messages from your family members, and where everybody in the immediate family knows exactly what's going on, so that those conversations can keep going. And when people, that way, again, when people are ready to come into those accounts, we can keep having very real conversations about it. And speaking of very real conversations, again, with Jay Lavar, Brian, it is okay to have conversations with our kids, and not just okay. Today, there's a certain necessity to it about how appropriate or inappropriate relationships can be, such as why an adult youth relationship is inappropriate. And that's these are just conversations so that if they are eventually falling down that technological isolation rabbit hole, there is a way out. But ideally, we avoid that isolation in the first place.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, Jay Lavar, Paul, Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your positive, productive schedules to share with us today. You hit it out of the park. I'm just saying thank you for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing when it comes to this important subject. I'm just going to hand it back to Drew.
Well, thank you, Ed. I'm excited to hear sitting in my seat because of just the content that we've been able to hear from each of our panels today, and to know that we've got great resources as a result of this. And so thank you so much, Paul, Jay Lavar, Mark. Really appreciate having you here. I really love many of the messages. You know, this it was really, for me, a call to action for any parent or anyone who's listening today. And that was the biggest takeaway for me. And, you know, a couple comments: never assume. I think that is just ringing in my ears, and I hope that everyone takes that to heart. Never assume, and do your due diligence. And sometimes it's challenging, sometimes it's hard, but really that's the topic was protecting our kids. And if we're going to do that, we need to take those actions that you're talking about. So thank you so much for that. I want to remind everyone, please fill out our post-event survey. We always take this feedback and try and build off of it to help make sure our events are successful in terms of delivering what you're looking for as our audience. Again, thank you so much for attending. Thank you to Doveman Care for their support, Public Health Agency of Canada for their support to be able to present these resources to you. We will be sending out resources. I put them in the chat, but I think we'll put them together in an email, make sure everyone has access to the various links that were talked about. We also have created a blog that we launched last Thursday that has links to many of these same resources. Paul Davis's tips on his Facebook site. Media Smarts is one of those, as well as the Canadian Center for Child Protection, and they have a resource called Protect Kids Online. We've got a great division of age and stage and common questions, and a great resource as well. So we'll email those out to you in addition to a copy or a link to a copy of this presentation. So you will get access to it. We'll be able to share it with others. And, you know, Dad Central, our vision is to see involved, responsible, and devoted dads. And we want to help support dads being engaged. We want to support those who support dads. And so with that, I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. Jay Lavar, you're in the US, got Thanksgiving coming up. I wish you all the best for a wonderful American Thanksgiving, and for all of us here in Canada, a very happy holiday season. We will be doing one more of these events. It's focused on dads and the gift that every kid wants from you. And that will be right now scheduled for December 15th. So we look forward to that conversation. For me, thank you so much, and wish you all a great week.